Well, happy Thanksgiving week, everybody. This week and next week are going to be a little bit different than the norm as I am combining the 2 weeks. So if you look on your syllabus, you'll see that you have the opportunity to start working on the material for Chapter 7. But it's not actually, nothing's going to be due until next week. So for those of you who would love the opportunity to get ahead so that next week is not so busy for you, you have a chance to do that. Or if you're going to be away this week and want to spend time with family, you have the opportunity to do your work next week. So it's really 1 week's worth of material over the course of 2 weeks to give everyone a little bit of a break. Really, Thanksgiving is a time to be with friends and family, so hopefully you are able to do that. So let me go through the material here so that we're clear on everything that is due and when it's due, so that there's no confusion. So we are on Chapter 7, which is cognition. It's how we think. You'll be learning about intelligence testing and how we test for different types of intelligence. That's part of our discussion for the week. And then as well as language development. So that's all in this chapter. So here's a little bit in terms of your to-do list. I've tried to make everything really clear about what's going on, clear for the due dates. Your discussion this week is, you can go ahead and once you've done the readings and you've done your watch the videos and all of that, if you're ready this week to go ahead and make the posts, then you can do that. But as you can see, the original posting to the discussion isn't due until next Thursday, and the response is next Saturday, where we're already getting into December by then. And then your quiz isn't due until next Friday. Okay, so you have time, but everything is open and ready to go if you want to get it done this week and again have an easier week next week, or vice versa. It's up to you. So in terms of the objectives for the chapter, like I said, the book kind of splits it really into three. You have cognition, then you have intelligence, and you have language. So cognition is really thinking, the process of thinking. How do we form mental images and concepts about the world that we live in? How are these also driven by society and culture? And what is kind of innate to all human beings? So we'll cover that first, and then it starts to jump into actual problem solving. Like, what do we do when we're making decisions and we're making judgments about complex issues? How does that happen? What is that process like? We'll talk about some barriers there, as well as something that I think students usually have fun with, which is a little bit on creativity, otherwise known as divergent thinking. How do you think outside of the box, if you will? Where does that come from? How are people able to do that? What sets apart those kinds of thinkers from, the average person who maybe isn't known as being creative in that way. So that's kind of like the bulk of the first third of the chapter, looking at those kinds of thinking strategies. And then it goes into intelligence. How do we measure one's intelligence? What is it? How does it look? Is it uniform across everyone? There's some debate on multiple intelligence, which is what the discussion for this week is about. How can you define intelligence with just one concept? Some see it as something that's more fluid, spanning across various perhaps regions of the brain in terms of, spatial ability and written verbal ability, logical mathematical ability. So we'll kind of dive into that a little bit, as well as looking at what's the role of heredity versus environment on our intelligence. And that's kind of a key question everyone has always had. Is intelligence something that you're just born with, or can you learn to be smart, in essence? Then the last third of the book will talk about language. How does language develop? What are its elements and structures? So we'll actually look at like phonemes and the different specifics about language and how we produce sound. And then looking a little broader in terms of once we have the functionality of language, how does it influence how we think? So, for instance, if you're Spanish speaking or if you're English speaking, does that influence the thought process that goes along with it? And in fact, you'll see that it does. People think differently depending upon what language they're using. And we know a lot of this from looking at bilingual research studies. Then we'll be taking a look at a lot that we've learned from animals and how they communicate and use language, especially chimps and monkeys. Done extensive work there with their ability to communicate really complex ideas with one another, and the use of sign language. And then the book will wrap up the chapter with identifying some methods for improving your thinking strategies. So this goes along nicely with some study skill stuff that we've already covered in earlier chapters. So here are your slides for the chapter. The videos are going to be coming from 2 different episodes. Episode 10, which is Cognition and Language, and then episode 11, which is Intelligence. So do make sure that you watch all of those, especially these ones for this chapter. There's some really good segments on what the research shows, and it will actually help tie in with a little bit of your discussion for this week. So the discussion is based around the Hawk reading number 14 called Just How Are You Intelligent? And basically you're going to be looking at Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. He was a big proponent of people are smart in different ways. He didn't really hold to the common thought at the time, which is that we have one type of intelligence, which is measured by our IQ, intelligence quotient, that is really putting people in a box and not allowing room for more creative sorts of thought processes that can be seen as intelligent, or people who are gifted kinesthetically, like our athletes and such, that's a certain kind of intelligence. So he did some interesting research there, and the discussion for this week is asking you to identify who did he study in his research. So how did he form the basis for defining his various types of intelligence? Why did he choose who he did? And then I want you to describe his 8 categories of intelligence. What are they, and what are some examples of people, famous people that fit each category? Now, I would urge you not to read other people's posts before you come up with these, and not to use the ones that are in the book. I want you to think of your own famous people examples. Okay, so if I start seeing a lot of the same people, it's going to be clear to me that, y'all didn't do these on your own. Some people really spring to mind, and it's easy. Okay, we can sometimes think of we think of someone who's gifted in language, and we think of a poet, and we all might think, Robert Frost, or, some of the very highly famous people in their categories. But try to go beyond that. If you can think of someone creative that you know of that fits a category, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I want to try to see how many varieties we can come up with each different type of intelligence. It'll be kind of cool to see. So once you've done that, then the last question there is, what is one important criticism of Gardner's theory? So why is it that we're not paying more attention to multiple intelligence? It was a theory he had, but we're still using IQ testing today as our main form of dictating what is intelligent. And so his theory hasn't totally caught on, although some are very big proponents of it and give it a lot of credit and weight. what is one big criticism as to why people have trouble with it? And what do you feel about that? What do you think about that criticism? Do you agree, disagree? And does it change how we assess intelligence overall? So that wraps up the discussion, and then you just have a quiz for Chapter 7 this week, and that is it. So hopefully the 2 weeks affords you some time to spend with family and friends and relax a little bit. I wish you all a very great Thanksgiving, great Black Friday if you do that, but really just a chance to rest and take a little break. Okay? Thanks, everyone.